Good morning. So we have our last session of this workshop on peaceful living, peaceful dying. So I thought the first thing is we'll do some meditation on the last of the 3 roots that we looked at yesterday. This is from the 9-point meditation on death, and we've it's kind of divided into 3 main points, which are called 3 roots. First one is just contemplating that death is inevitable. We're definitely going to die. There's no way we can run away from that, avoid that. No place in the world, in the universe, we can go. Even if you go in a spaceship into this space, to another planet, try to run away from death. It's not possible. There's no place you can go. So we have to accept the fact that we are going to die. And then the second main, second main point is that we don't know when it's going to happen. Yeah, the time of our death is unknown, uncertain, and it could literally be at any point in our life, any time in our life. So then the third main point is looking at what can help us, because contemplating those first 2 points will probably give us a sense of urgency, a sense of discomfort. Yeah, oh, I'm going to die and I don't know when it's going to happen, so what do I do? So it doesn't help to just be scared and just sit there feeling frightened and worried and anxious and let your mind have all kinds of fearful thoughts. That doesn't do any good. There are definitely things that we can do to prepare ourselves for death. Mainly spiritual practice or Dharma practice, which we'll be looking at afterwards. But that's the conclusion we need to come to from contemplating this third point, where we look at, well, what about the usual things that help me in my life when I have difficulties? Can they help me at the time of death? So we go through family and friends. We usually turn to them for help. So we look at how much they can help us at the time of death. And then our wealth, our possessions, money, possessions, things we own, can they help us at the time of death? And our body, this very body that we have, is that able to give us any help at the time of death? So we see in this meditation, we recognize limitations, that those 3 things, people, possessions, and our body, have limited ability to help us at the time of death, and we have to leave them all behind. We have to separate from all of them. So it's just our mind alone that goes from this life to the next life, carrying our karma, the karmic seeds from the actions that we created during our life. So ideally, the conclusion we reach after contemplating these points is that we really need to engage in Dharma practice, spiritual practice. And we'll look, after the meditation, we'll look at specific things that we can do in terms of our Dharma practice that can help us be prepared for death. So don't worry, don't be afraid. It's not that there's no solution, nothing can be done. There are things that we can do. We just have to learn them and train ourselves in them. So let's begin with the prayers, and after the prayers, we'll go into the meditation. So we start with refuge and bodhicitta. So while reciting this, if you can, imagine the Buddha in front of you, Shakyamuni Buddha, or just focus your mind on the Buddhas on the altar in front of you, and try to really feel you are in the presence of the Buddha, real living Buddha with all his excellent qualities, because the Buddha is ever present, even though we may think, oh, but the Buddha died a long time ago, he passed away. Well, he left his body, but that doesn't mean he went out of existence. Buddha's mind is ever present, always present. And Buddha's mind is with us all the time, with his excellent qualities of compassion and love and wisdom and skillful means, knowing many different ways to help us, each one of us, and also all other living beings. So really try to feel the presence of the Buddha. And in fact, there are many Buddhas, many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas around us all the time. This is something Lama Zopa Rinpoche said. He's probably said it here and elsewhere. He said, we're never alone. Wherever we are, anytime, there are always many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas around us, looking at us with compassion and love, ready to help us. So try to feel that they are there, and they are beings that we can trust, we can have confidence in, we can rely on, because of their excellent qualities. They can guide us to be free of all of our suffering and problems, and to gain genuine peace and happiness up to the highest happiness of enlightenment. And also, if you can, feel that you're taking refuge and relying on Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, not just for yourself, for your own benefit, but for the benefit of others. There's many other people and beings that you can open your heart to and feel the wish to help. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And then to expand this feeling of wanting to help others, we recite the 4 immeasurable thoughts and really try to generate love, compassion, and joy and equanimity with respect to all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then the 7-limb prayer to accumulate merit that will help us reach enlightenment and purify the obstacles like negative karma that hinders our practice and our attainment of enlightenment. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. And then offering the mandala, the universe, with all the beautiful, pleasing things, precious things, imagining this as a pure land, offering it to the Buddha, to the objects of refuge, and then wishing that all sentient beings can enjoy the pure land. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Okay, so I'll guide the meditation and just do the best you can to stay focused on what we're doing. Keep your mind focused, concentrated on the meditation. It is difficult to concentrate, so don't be surprised or upset if you do find it difficult to concentrate. That's normal. But being patient with yourself, being kind to yourself, whenever you notice your mind has wandered away, some other thought has come up in your mind, like something you're going to do later today or tomorrow. So just try to notice that and put aside that other thought and return your attention to the meditation. So even if you have to do that again and again and again, try not to lose patience. Remain patient with yourself. Remain kind to yourself. Our mind is like a little child, and it doesn't help to get angry at ourselves. And on the other hand, if we are patient with ourselves and just keep patiently bringing our attention back to our meditation object again and again, eventually our mind does quiet down, get tamed. So let's make sure that we have a good motivation for being here, participating in this session of the workshop. So if you're familiar with the bodhicitta motivation and how to cultivate that, you can bring that into your mind as your motivation. But if you're not familiar with bodhicitta, then try to have some kind of altruistic motivation, meaning caring about others, not only about yourself. So of course we care about ourselves. We want to do what is good for ourselves to help us be more happy and healthy. But it's good to expand our mind and think about others, not just family and friends, but even strangers, even people who are difficult. So they want to be happy too. and want to be free of suffering. And we can learn ways of helping them, but it's good to have the wish to do that, to wish to help others. So you could think, I'm here to learn ways that will help not only myself, but also others, other people, other beings, as many other people and beings as possible. So that's a suggested motivation to have for being here. You can use your own thoughts, your own words to generate such a motivation. That really try to feel that you're here not just for yourself, but also for others. Okay, so with this third root of the 9-point meditation, we look at what can help us at the time of death. So it might be helpful, if you're able to do it, to imagine that point in your life, the final days of your life. You might imagine yourself in bed and feeling ill. Maybe you've been ill for some time and the doctors have tried many ways to cure your illness, but none of them have worked. And they have gently informed you that it's good to prepare yourself for the end of your life. There's nothing more that they can do. So in that situation, we will probably feel the need for help. Who or what can help us at that time? So our thoughts will probably first turn to our family and friends, our close loved ones. But check how much can those people help you. So they can probably help you physically with your physical needs, helping you eat and bathe yourself and so on. And with your emotional needs, staying with you, talking with you, trying to say words that will comfort you, showing their love for you and so on. So those things will be helpful to us as we get closer to the end our final breath. But as we are actually dying, our ability to perceive and communicate with people in the outside world will gradually shut down. Our awareness of them will diminish and then cease, and our mind will be alone on its own, unable to see, hear, and talk to our loved ones. And they cannot go with us as we die and as our mind leaves this world, this life, and goes to the next one. So that's a journey we make on our own. No one can go with us. So that's a really hard truth to face, but see if you can recognize that it is important to face that and accept that and prepare yourself for it, because it's definitely going to happen. And ideally, we want to continue loving our friends and relatives, and have good relationships with them, but to decrease our attachment, our clinging to them, by understanding that we can't remain with them forever. And if we have strong attachment to them, that will make it very hard for us to let go. There'll be a lot of unhappiness, a lot of suffering due to attachment. So this is something that takes time. We can't do it immediately, but gradually we can work on accepting this separation that will happen and work on decreasing our attachment. And doing that during our life will definitely make it easier at the time of death. And then the second point is looking at our wealth and possessions. So during our life, we spend a lot of time and energy accumulating wealth, money, and property, house, apartment, car, other things. And these help us while we're alive, help us live comfortably, take care of ourselves, enjoy ourselves. But they too have to be left behind when we die. We can't take any of those things with us. And if we have strong attachment, clinging to our money, our possessions, and so on, that will make it difficult for us to let go and die peacefully. Instead, our mind will be disturbed, unhappy, worried, and so on. So try to recognize that and see the need to work on overcoming such attachment during your life. And then the third point is looking at our body, which is our constant companion from the very beginning of our life. We're with our body 24 hours a day. We also tend to identify with our body, almost like this is me, this body is me. But that's not true, because when we die, our mind, our consciousness will separate from this body and leave it behind and go to the next life and take another body. And if we have a strong attachment to our body and a strong sense of identifying with our body, this is me, then that will cause unhappiness and fear, anxiety at the time of death, making it hard to die with a peaceful mind. So see if you can recognize that and see the need to work on overcoming such attachment during your life. And doing that will make it easier to die and separate from this body. So what can help us at the time of death? If we have to leave all these people and things behind and go all alone to the next life, what can give us help and comfort at that time? So the Buddhist answer is Dharma. Knowledge of Dharma, practice of Dharma, experience of Dharma. For example, knowing how to manage our mind, to keep our mind in a calm and positive state, even in difficult situations. So that's one thing we can learn from the Dharma. but also a big part of Dharma practice is living our life in an ethical way, refraining from non-virtue or negative karma, like killing, stealing, and so forth, and creating virtuous karma, good karma, like giving and helping and creating merit. Because it's karma that goes with us to the next life. Our mind with karma, karmic imprints from our actions, that is what goes to the next life. And it's our karma that determines what kind of experiences we have. If we have more negative karma, that will bring negative experiences, suffering, problems. If we have more good karma, that will bring positive experiences, a good rebirth, and resources, everything we need to have a good life. So see if you can accept that, understand that, accept that, and then make the determination to live your life in such a way that you practice Dharma as much as you can, avoid non-virtuous actions, bad karma, and create virtuous actions, good karma, as much as possible. So again, that was probably too short, too little time for you to really think through all those points, but that's something you can do on your own. So hopefully you will take the time to think more about those points and explore how you can live your life in such a way that you're more prepared for death when it happens. And a couple of practical things that we can do are making a will. And you can do that at any age. You don't have to be old to make a will. Even if you're 20 years old and you have some money, you have some possessions, it's good to make a will so that you specify who you want those things to go to, yeah? And that helps to keep the mind more calm at the time of death, because if you haven't done that, and then you find yourself dying, the mind can kind of worry, oh, what will happen to my money? What will happen to my car? What will happen to my computer, my phone? Yeah? So worrying about your things can make unnecessary worry and anxiety at the time of death, and that will make it hard to die with a peaceful state of mind. So if you make a will, then you can say who gets your money, who gets your car, who gets your your phone, and so forth. And then you don't have to worry about that at the time of death. And it's also good, I think the Singapore government encourages this as well, to make a living will. or I don't know what it's called, advance directive. There's different terms for that, but there you specify, like, if you're severely injured and maybe there's no chance for your recovery and you're on life support, if you say, no, I don't want to be kept alive, I don't want extraordinary measures, I don't know how the wording goes, but you don't want, if it's really definite that you're not going to recover, that you're definitely going to die, you don't want your body to just be kept alive in an artificial way. So it's good to specify that beforehand, because otherwise, if you're in that situation, you're unconscious, right? And the doctors don't know what you want, or your relatives don't know what you want. It makes it really hard for them to make a decision. So if you yourself, sign a document saying what you want done with your body in that kind of situation, so that's really helpful for those people, doctors and family members. So those are some practical things we can do. And also, I think you can specify what you want done with your body, if you want it to be buried or cremated or whatever, right? There's different options there. And also, in the FPMT has one hospice in New Zealand called Amitabha Hospice. It's been existing for a long time, and so they're helping people going through the process of dying. And one thing they put together was a Dharma will, which is a really excellent idea. And the idea of a Dharma will is, if you are a Dharma practitioner and you wish for prayers to be said for you while you're dying, after you die, and so forth, then you can specify that. So that's really helpful too, especially if your family members are not Dharma practitioners and they don't know what kind of prayers you do or what kind of prayers you would want to be done. They don't know who to contact, your teachers and so on. So you can make out this Dharma will where you say, I want, when I'm about to die, please inform Ken Rinpoche, Geshe Chune, and Kopan, and ask the Kopan monks and nuns to do such and such prayers, and so on and so forth. So it's just an example, but you can, mention your teachers, who you want to be informed that you're about to die, so that they know and they can do prayers for you, and which kind of prayers you would like to be done. You could also specify if you'd like people to come and do prayers with you at your bedside as you're dying. That's really helpful as well. So you can say, please inform Amitabha Buddhist Center to send some people over and do medicine Buddha puja, right? So that's really helpful too, so that you let your family members and loved ones know what are your wishes regarding Dharma practice, Dharma prayers, and so forth as you are dying. So that doing those things can help you have more peace of mind, both now and when you are getting closer to death. So in my own case, I sort of delayed doing this for a long time. I really thought, I really do need to make my will and my Dharma will, but somehow I was dragging my feet. I didn't. But then when I moved to Shravasti Abbey some years ago, that's actually strongly recommended. They want all the members of the community to do that, so that those documents are there in a filing cabinet, and in case you're in an accident or you have a heart attack or whatever, they can just pull those documents out and they'll know, this is what she wanted, this is who we need to contact. And so, it took me a while to get around to it, but once I did, I felt kind of good, like, okay, I've taken care of that. But yeah, it's good for you, but it's also good for the people who are left behind, your family, your loved ones, because they care about you. They want to do what you want done. But if you hadn't specified that, now you're unconscious, then they don't know, right? So it would be really helpful for them to have peace of mind, pull out that document and say, okay, this is what she wants, this is what he wants, and then carry that out for your sake. So let's look at some ways, other ways we can prepare ourselves for death. So this is the real point of this 9-point meditation on death, is to realize that we need to do something to get ready for death. And ideally, we start soon, like now, today, because we don't know when death is going to happen. So here is a list of some things. It's not complete. It doesn't include every single spiritual practice, but some of the main practices that we can start to do to prepare ourselves for death. So the first one is living ethically. So that means, according to Buddhism, ethics is basically non-harming behavior, refraining from actions that give harm to others. So, for example, there's the 10 non-virtuous actions that the Buddha mentioned. These are the kind of worst kinds of non-virtues that we could do: killing, stealing, and so forth, lying, harsh speech. So the Buddha said, try to refrain from those, because if you do those actions, they're harmful for others, but they're also harmful for ourselves. Because if we do those actions, we are creating the karma to experience suffering, like unfortunate rebirths in our next life, future lives, and then suffering and problems in those future lives, but also in this life. Karma can bring results that we experience in this life as well. So that's basically what it means to live ethically: refraining from non-virtuous actions, harmful actions, negative karma, whatever you want to call it, but actions that cause suffering. But it also includes doing actions that are beneficial, that are the cause of happiness. So creating good karma. And we can do that. Just by refraining from bad karma, we are automatically creating good karma, okay? So if we abandon killing, we say we really try our best to live our life and not kill any other living being. Just by doing that, we are creating good karma. We are creating virtue. And that's not too difficult. Of course, there's always some challenges when your house gets invaded by ants or termites or mosquitoes. So, yeah, that's a challenge. But to at least have the intention, I really want to avoid killing as much as I can, and try to live in that way. Really try to avoid killing. And if there are circumstances where you don't have much choice, like termites, somebody was asking about that the other day, once, many years ago, I was living in a Dharma center in the West, and it was an old building, and they found that there were, like, the beams, the frame of the building was wood, and there was some kind of insect. It wasn't termites, it was something else, but an insect that was living in the wood and eating it. And if we just left those insects there, then eventually all the beams, the frame of the building would just collapse. The building would collapse. And that would be harmful. That would be risky, dangerous for the people living there. And so they tried to look for ways to remove these insects, but apparently there was no way that they could just be removed and put somewhere else. They were inside the wood. And so there was just no alternative other than to kill them. Or we could have just said, okay, we'll move out and let them live there and destroy the building. But the teacher, the Geshe, who was the teacher in the center, he said, what we are doing here is something virtuous. It's a Dharma center. So here we're living here to teach the Dharma, learn the Dharma, practice the Dharma, help others learn the Dharma as well. So we're doing something really worthwhile, really virtuous. And we didn't have enough money. There wasn't enough money to just leave that building and get another one. So he said, yeah, in this case, it is better for us to stay here and continue using this building. And there was really no choice other than to call in the exterminators. But we tried to do it in the most compassionate way possible. So we did prayers and pujas, dedicated the merit for these insects that were being killed, and prayed for them to have fortunate rebirths, like in Amitabha's Pure Land. We did purification of our karma for doing that action. We promised we would try to never do it again. So in those ways, you're minimizing the negative karma. Because otherwise, if you think, oh, this is a good thing to do, and I want to do it again and again and again, rejoice in what you're doing, then it becomes heavier. And if you have hatred, negative attitudes towards the beings that you're killing and want them to suffer, that also makes it heavier. So when you understand karma, all the different aspects of karma, then there are ways you can minimize the negative karma you're creating. But yeah, sometimes there are choices like that that are really difficult. It's just the world that we are in. So, but as long as we have the thought, I really want to avoid killing as much as I possibly can, and try our best to live that way. And if we do happen to do something negative, then there's the practice of purification that we can do to purify that karma. So basically, that's what's involved in living ethically. Try to refrain from creating negative karma, try to create virtuous karma as much as you can, and do purification of whatever negative karma you have created. And then the second point is study spiritual teachings. So in our case, as Buddhists, that means the Dharma, Buddhist teachings, and teachings by Buddhist masters, Indian masters, Tibetan masters, and so on. So here and in most Gelugpa Dharma centers, the main thing we study is the Lamrim, the stages of the path to enlightenment. So that's very complete. It contains all the things we need to understand and practice to get ourselves from here to enlightenment. So there's a lot of really wonderful, beautiful teachings and practices in the Lamrim. So it's something we could easily spend our entire life learning, not just once, but again and again and again. Each time we listen to or read the Lamrim, then we gain more understanding, more insight, and so the more we can study and learn spiritual teachings, then the more knowledge we have that will help us to live a good life, deal with whatever problems we encounter in our life, and just turn our life into something beneficial, not harmful. And especially helping us at the time of death, because then we'll know, oh, now I'm dying, what do I need to do? What do I need to think about at this time? So the more we have studied spiritual teachings, the more knowledge we have that will help us at that time. And the third point is cultivate a spiritual practice. And there's many different kinds of spiritual practices, and some of them we might be comfortable doing and think, yeah, that's something I like doing. I see that it helps me. Other practices we may feel not so comfortable about and don't feel like we want to do them. That's completely okay. You don't have to do everything, right? You can pick and choose. I heard that from my teachers in the early days when I was starting to learn Dharma. They would sometimes say that Dharma, learning Dharma and practicing Dharma can be a bit like going to a supermarket or a department store where there's many, many things to buy, many things on the shelves, but you don't have to buy everything, right? You have a list of things you want, and you go and you take those things and you leave. And so they said we can do a similar thing with the Dharma. We don't have to study everything and practice everything. We can choose those topics that we want to study and those practices we want to do. And if there's something we're not comfortable with, we can just leave it. I'm sure those things are relevant for other people. There are other people who like those topics and those practices, so that's fine. And if we feel that's not for me, then that's okay. We can leave it aside, put it aside. Our mind may change later, after a few years, we might think, oh, now I'm interested in learning that and doing that. Okay, so, but right now, that's not something that seems right for me. So there's different kinds of spiritual practices. One is meditation. There's different kinds of meditation, such as mindfulness meditation, where we cultivate the ability to watch our mind, what is going on in our mind, and learn to see it all as impermanent. Whatever comes up in our mind is impermanent. It comes and goes. It's not permanent, not fixed, not always there. So that is a really helpful method for dealing, especially when it comes to emotions, disturbing emotions like anger, attachment, jealousy, anxiety. So if we understand mindfulness, if we understand impermanence, or we're practicing mindfulness, then we can see, oh yeah, now there's fear, now there's anxiety, now there's anger, but it's not permanent. It's not going to last forever. And we can even see that. We can see it arising and passing. And that can help us not take it so seriously and not get so caught up in it and act out that particular emotion. And that's particularly helpful at the time of death, because as we're getting closer to death, there probably will be disturbing thoughts and emotions coming up in our mind. Our mind may even be sort of overwhelmed by these disturbing thoughts and emotions. And if we've never learned mindfulness, if we've never learned how to deal with our mind, then we will find it difficult to manage all those thoughts and emotions. But if we have learned mindfulness and practice mindfulness, then that will really help us. Just as an example of this, there's a book called Tuesdays with Morrie. I don't know if any of you have read that. They also made a movie out of it, which is really beautiful. It's a true story of a man in America who was a professor in university, sociology professor, and he got, they call it Lou Gehrig's disease. What's the other term for that? NLS, LS. You get gradually paralyzed. Parts of your body get paralyzed. ALS, yeah, okay. Yeah, they call it Lou Gehrig's disease because he was a famous baseball player who got it and died at a relatively young age. So maybe before that it wasn't so well known. So so he got that disease, and it started with his feet and then gradually moved up And I guess there's no real cure for it, so it's a terminal illness. And one of his former students was a writer, and he heard about his teacher's condition and went to visit him, and then they decided to make a book. The student would visit Mori every Tuesday, and they would have a conversation, and they would record it, and then made it into this book. That's why it's called Tuesdays with Mori. So it's all the conversations between the teacher and the student every Tuesday. And they talked about all kinds of things, life and death and marriage and kids and and so on and so forth. And Mori was quite an extraordinary person, very wise, very compassionate, and very positive. He was so positive in the face of his situation of facing death, and was so loving. He was giving all this loving, caring, joyful energy to the people around him, even though he was the one who was dying. But he was able to help the people around him. And anyway, why I'm bringing this up is because it seems that he talked about doing meditation, and it sounds like there was somebody who was visiting him and meditating with him and helping him with mindfulness meditation. And that was really helpful because sometimes his mind would get caught up with fear, especially when he started having difficulty breathing. Yeah, the disease reached his lungs and he was having trouble breathing, which must be really terrifying when that happens. And so with his practice of mindfulness, he was able to watch the fear come and not get totally caught up in it, but know that it was impermanent, and he would write it out and eventually it would pass. Or another time, sadness would come up, thinking about his family, his wife, his kids that he was leaving behind, and feel a lot of sadness about that. But with his practice of mindfulness, he was able to just observe those feelings coming and not get totally overwhelmed by them, and then they would pass. So that practice can really help us ride the waves of our emotions, disturbing thoughts and emotions. So training in that during our life will help us be able to manage our mind at the time of death. Shamatha, that's a practice of single-minded concentration where we have one object that we focus on, like the image of the Buddha or the breath, and you train your mind to keep going back to that one object whenever it wanders away. So that can be really helpful too, because again, if you have disturbing thoughts and emotions coming up in your mind, you can take your mind away from those and go back to your meditation object, which will help you to stay more calm as you're approaching death. So meditation, if we practice it during our life and get some experience of it, then that can be helpful as we are dying. And then the second is devotional practices and mantras. So there's lots of these in the Tibetan tradition. Many different deities, Tara, Chenrezig, Medicine Buddha, and so on. And so this might be easier for some people than meditation, because you just need to think about Tara, for example. Everyone has different deities that they connect with and feel good about, feel comfortable with. It could be Tara, Chenrezig, Medicine Buddha. So during your life, you practice one of those practices, you kind of get familiar with it and comfortable with it, and then that can be really helpful at the time of death, to take refuge in that particular deity, pray to them, recite the mantra, feel their presence, feel that they're there with you, kind of helping you, giving you positive energy to help you get through this this experience. So I think that kind of practice may be easier than the first one, especially as we're dying. We may not be feeling very well. We may have pain. We may be in the hospital where the atmosphere is a bit chaotic, noisy, and we may be having medications that are causing our mind to be, not so clear, not so concentrated. So trying to do meditation could be more difficult, more challenging in that situation, whereas taking refuge in a deity like Tara, Medicine Buddha, and so on, and praying to them, reciting their mantra, could be easier. It may not require as much sort of focus, concentration. On the other hand, some people have difficulty with those kind of practices. They don't feel so comfortable praying to deities, and maybe more skeptical if that's really effective. So that's why I say you can try different practices and see what works best for you. And the third one is loving kindness and compassion. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche really emphasized that one. He said, the best situation is dying with compassion. If we can have compassion, loving kindness in our mind as we are dying, that's really the best, because then we're dying with a really good, positive, pure state of mind. So that's really the bottom line. The most important thing is being able to keep our mind in a state that is positive, virtuous, rather than negative, non-virtuous. Okay, so we have to learn how to do that, how to generate a positive state of mind and try to maintain that positive state of mind as we're dying. So loving kindness and compassion, these are really, really beautiful, positive, virtuous states of mind. So but to be able to have them as we're dying, to be able to have loving kindness and compassion at that time, we have to practice them during our life. We have to learn how to have loving kindness, how to have compassion. We can't just suddenly, at the last minute, learn how to do that if we never did it during our life. And so it's really good to learn about those states of mind and how to cultivate them, and then really try our best to do that in our daily life. And the more we do that, the more they just become our natural state of mind, our natural way of being, like our default mode. And then even to the point where they just arise kind of naturally, spontaneously, without having to make effort. So if we do that during our life, then it will be easier to have those in our mind as we die. And then the last one on the list is purifying unwholesome karma or negative karma using the 4 powers. So as we go through life, because we're just ordinary beings, we're not enlightened beings, we can't be perfect. So we do make mistakes, we do create negative karma, and we really want to make sure that we purify our negative karma before we leave this life and go to the next life, because otherwise our negative karma can produce bad experiences, bad rebirth, suffering. We don't want those things to happen. So it's important to learn how to purify our karma. And that is done with the 4 powers. I'll just mention them now. I think most of you are familiar with the 4 powers, but I'll be explaining them on Tuesday night, giving a talk about purification with the 4 powers, so I'll spend more time then. So regret is where we bring to mind negative things that we've done, and we feel regret. We recognize that was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. And it's not like you're hating yourself, beating yourself up, feeling guilty, but it's just an intelligent recognition that you did something that was unwise and unskillful, and you feel regret for that. And regret motivates us to apply some antidote, some remedy. So with guilt, which is different than regret, with guilt we tend to just feel bad. We sort of drown in feelings of, oh, I'm so bad, and it's almost like there's no solution. There's no way out but to feel bad and think you're bad. So that's guilt, and regret isn't like that. Regret is constructive, so you realize, I made a mistake, and now I want to do something about it. I want to rectify my mistake. So it motivates you to do something constructive. And then the second of the four powers is reliance. That means relying on someone or something that can help us to purify. And in the case of Buddhism, that means the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So we renew our refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. If you have already taken refuge, then you renew that, you reaffirm that you do want to follow Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha and their guidance, and that you want to cultivate compassion for sentient beings and stop harming them and do what is helpful to them instead. And the third power is remedy, and that involves doing something virtuous, positive, to counteract the negative thing that you did. So it's like balancing out. I did something bad, I created some bad karma, now I'm going to do something good to create good karma. Okay, so there's different virtuous things you can do, like reciting prayers, sutras, mantras, again, taking refuge, doing something to benefit others, like doing some volunteer work or giving a donation to charity or making offerings to the Buddha. So it said just about any virtuous action can be done as this remedy, this third power. Then the fourth one is resolve, or also called determination. That is where you make the determination to not do that action again. So you really have to feel, I'm not going to go out and do it again. Okay, I really will try my best to not do it again. It depends on the action. If it's something really heavy, then you can say, I will never do that again, right? Like you murdered, you killed, you stole, then you can say, never again, I'm never going to do that again. But if it's something kind of minor that you probably can't completely stop, like telling little white lies or getting angry at somebody, it wouldn't be realistic to say, I will never do that again, because you probably will, and then you're going against your promise. So for something like that, they say it's better to think, either you could think of a short period of time, like I won't do that for the next 5 minutes, or the next hour, or today. Yeah, so give yourself a limited amount of time to not do that action again. And then you can gradually increase that amount of time. That's one of the ideas behind taking the 8 precepts, the 8 Mahayana precepts, one-day precepts. So we promise for one day, I will not kill, I will not steal, and so on. And if we get the experience of not doing those things for one day, then we get kind of confident, like, oh, I can do it, I can stop those actions for one day. And then that gives us encouragement to try to do it for longer. And eventually you get to the point where you can give them up completely. You know, I will completely stop those actions for the rest of my life. So it's best to do it in a realistic way, in a doable way that you can manage. So that's just a brief explanation of the 4 powers, but it said that if we apply those 4 powers, then we can purify any unwholesome karma, any negative action, even murder, even something really horrible. They say there's nothing that is so bad that it can't be purified. But we do need to develop these 4 powers sincerely to the best of our ability. So these are just some of the practices that we could do during our life to help us prepare for death. And if you're not able to do all of them, or you're not comfortable with some of them, you want to learn more, study more before you start doing, that's fine. But hopefully there'll be at least one on that list that you feel attracted to and you feel you would like to start learning and start doing. But the point is to have some practice, spiritual practice during your life that will, becomes kind of something regular, something that's a part of your life, and that will help you be in a positive state of mind at the time of death. Okay, so then next, before we die, we will most probably experience the deaths of others, like family members, friends, and because we care about those people, we naturally wish to help them, and there are things we can do now to prepare ourselves to be able to help others who are dying. And the meaning of helping someone die, according to Buddhism, in terms of a spiritual practice, is helping the person die with a positive state of mind. That's really the most important thing, is if the person who's dying can have a positive state of mind, and we can help them do that. That's the main help that we can give. Of course, we can help them in other ways with their bodily needs, bathing, eating, drinking, taking their medicines, and so on, and just spending time with them, giving them our love, our comforting words, and so on. So we can help with those things as well. But from the point of view of Dharma, if we can help them die with a positive state of mind, that's really, Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, that is the most beneficial thing we can do, the greatest act of kindness and generosity we can offer to them. But having said that, we have to accept that we can't make them have a positive mind, right? It's impossible to change somebody else's mind. Even a Buddha can't do that. Even if we were Buddha, we couldn't go into somebody else's mind and sort of fix it so that they have a positive state of mind. That's impossible. So we shouldn't expect that, because otherwise, if we're trying to help this person have a positive state of mind, but whatever we do, whatever we say, they are angry, they're negative, yeah? And then we may feel like I failed, and we may feel guilty. I didn't do what I wanted to do. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And then we beat ourselves up and feel guilty. That's wrong, okay? That we should try to avoid that. So that's why it's important to understand and accept that we can't force somebody to have a positive state of mind. It is simply not possible. So we need to understand that and accept that. Does that make sense? Because some of the questions people were asking the other day or yesterday, I kind of had the feeling that they maybe felt some responsibility. They want their mother or their father to, take refuge or have some positive belief in an afterlife. And I mean, of course, if it's somebody close to us, like a parent or a sibling, we really want them to have a positive state of mind, and we really do what we can. But we have to accept that, we can't force that to happen. All we can do is try. We can try, have that motivation of wanting to help them, but we also have to accept that we can't make that happen. We can't make them have a positive state of mind. But still, there are things we can do that might help them go in that direction. So the first point on the list is prepare for your own death. So if we do the practices that I've talked about so far that will help us prepare for death, like just learning to be more accepting of death, not so afraid of it, not avoiding it, and prepare ourselves spiritually to have a positive state of mind. So the more we do that work on ourselves, the more prepared we are for death, the better we will be able to help others. So if we don't do that work, if we don't do anything to prepare ourselves for death, and then we think we can help somebody else, I think it's risky. I think it's unrealistic to think that way, because death is quite a serious thing. And if someone we know is dying and we go to visit them, it can stir up a lot of things in ourselves that we may not have experienced before, like fears, sadness, grief. And so the more we can do our own work, working on preparing for death and dealing with our thoughts and feelings about death, prepare ourselves for death, then the better we'll be able to be with another person and help them through that experience. And a big part of that is number 2, learning to manage disturbing emotions, because, that's probably what will happen, especially if it's someone close to us, a parent, a sibling, a family member, right? So when they're approaching death, then most probably emotions will come up in us: attachment, sadness, grief, fear, anxiety, even anger. We may be angry at the doctors if we think they're not doing enough to help our loved one, and so on, or angry at our loved one that they are leaving us, right? Sometimes the mind can be quite kind of irrational, just these emotions coming up. And so, a big part of Buddhist practice is learning how to work with our mind and how to manage disturbing emotions like anger, attachment. And there's lots and lots of antidotes, remedies, methods that we can use to deal with disturbing emotions. But we need to learn those and practice those and get some experience in doing that, so that then when a loved one is passing away and those emotions are coming up, we'll know how to deal with them, how to manage them. Although even, it could be difficult. And so if we can at least have others that we can turn to for help and guidance if we have difficulty managing on our own. So if a loved one is dying and you're feeling a lot of sadness and grief, if you have spiritual teachers, spiritual friends you can go to, talk to, get help from, then that can be really helpful. Yeah, so it's good to learn mindfulness and also learn different methods for dealing with disturbing emotions. Impermanence, developing more awareness of impermanence is a really helpful method for lots of different emotions, just to recognize that whatever emotions come up in our mind are not permanent. They're not always there, but they come and go, arise and pass. So the more familiar we become with impermanence, the more we're able to sort of manage those waves of emotions and learn how to just ride them out instead of being overwhelmed by them. And then the third one is giving hope and finding forgiveness. This is mentioned in a book called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, which is very helpful. It has a lot of helpful information on how to deal with death in our own case, but also helping others who are dying. So the idea here is that when people are dying, they sometimes feel guilt. People sometimes feel guilt. They, thinking back over their life and remembering things they did that weren't very wholesome, that may have been harmful, and then they may feel a lot of guilt, regret, and depression. I didn't live a good life, I lived such a bad life. And also fear, anxiety, that they may be punished, that bad things will happen to them as a result of what they did. So if they're going through those experiences, then clearly that their mind isn't in a good state, a happy state, and so it can be helpful to try to help them deal with those feelings. So the book says one way you can help them is just let them talk, let them express their feelings and listen with compassion and also in a non-judgmental way. And that might be a little challenging if they start telling you about things they did that you never heard about before. It's like, whoa, you did that. But yeah, we have to try to be careful to not make them feel worse. So try to really have an attitude of compassion, kindness, not judgmentalness, criticalness. You can imagine the Buddha and how the Buddha would feel in that situation, because it said the Buddha never gets angry at anybody, never judges anybody, and is always forgiving. And if the person is talking about those things that they did and expressing regret, that they're realizing that was wrong, that's actually a good thing. It's good for them to feel regret for mistakes that they made, harmful things that they did. So try to appreciate that. It's almost like they're confessing, confessing what they did, and that's a positive thing. So try not to be critical or judgmental. And it's also good to encourage them to remember good things that they've done, because maybe their mind is only focusing on the negative things that they did, the mistakes they made, and so on, and they may feel like, oh, my life has been a total waste, I've done nothing but bad things, and they're sort of forgetting or ignoring good things that they've done. And so it can be helpful to remind them of those. Yeah, you got married and you raised children, and look at what your children are doing, and you did this and that. So remind them of positive things that they did so that they don't feel totally 100% bad and hopeless. Try to encourage them to feel positive about the good that they did. And And also to talk to them about forgiveness, because if they believe in Buddha or they believe in God, they may think, oh, they're going to punish me, yeah? And both Buddha and God are said to be completely forgiving and never judgmental. So encourage them to think that way. You know, if they sincerely regret the mistakes that they made, then they will be forgiven and they will be helped by whoever they believe in, Buddha, God, and so forth. And so help them feel positive rather than negative and hopeless about their life and what they did during their life. Yeah, so help them find forgiveness. You know, sometimes we can be forgiven by others. Other people are willing to forgive us, but forgiving ourselves is often difficult. That's often the most challenging thing. You know, everybody else may say, it's okay, we forgive you, but the person is still beating themselves up and feeling bad. And so that's kind of a common problem. So do the best you can to help this person feel forgiveness of themselves and feel hopeful. But again, don't expect that you will be able to do that. Just try your best, but accept that whatever you say, whatever you do may not work. You may not be able to help this person's mind to change. So they may continue feeling bad. But I think that even if whatever you say, whatever you do doesn't seem to be having an effect on their mind, try not to feel bad about that. It could just take time. Yeah? It may take time for the person to contemplate what you're saying, and maybe later their mind will change. Yeah, so don't feel hopeless. And also making prayers for the person, praying to the Buddha or Tara, Chenrezig, whoever you have faith in, your guru. So pray to them on behalf of this person, praying, please help this person's mind to change and turn around and stop feeling so bad and feel more positive and hopeful. So prayers sometimes have an effect. They sometimes work. Yeah, I believe that. Okay, next point, number 4, is create a peaceful environment. So this is recommended by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. We are affected by our environment. So Rinpoche said it's good to create an environment that's beautiful and peaceful, that projects calm and order, inspires spaciousness of mind. So you can have fresh flowers. Flowers are really beautiful. And then images that will help the person to have a positive state of mind. So if the person is a Buddhist and they have belief in Buddha, you'd have an image of the Buddha, any spiritual teachers that they connected with. Or if they're not a Buddhist, then whatever images they will inspire faith and positive thoughts in them. So if they're Christian, for example, images, pictures of Jesus, saints, and so on. So be respectful of the person's beliefs and practices and do things according to that, whatever will help that person to be in a positive state of mind. Also, it's best to, both for yourself and other friends and family members, to try to avoid showing signs of grief, like, crying and begging the person, please don't leave. It'll be so hard for us if you leave. I mean, that's not going to be very helpful for the person, right? So, of course, you have those feelings, but take them somewhere else, right? take them outside of the room and not in front of the person. Deal with them elsewhere. Also try not to talk about things that might disturb their mind, cause them anxiety or desire, attachment or anger. So try to avoid those things. Again, talk about those things somewhere else, not in front of the person. I mean, if you have to discuss something with a person, like some aspect of their will or their care, of course, that. But yeah, just be sensitive that whatever you talk about in their presence, try to avoid things that would stir up disturbing thoughts and emotions. Try to avoid those things. And then number 5 is help the person to remember and practice spiritual teachings and practices according to their faith. So try to find out if that person has certain beliefs, certain practices that they're familiar with, and encourage them to remember those things and do those things. And don't try to force your own beliefs and practices on them. That's not appropriate. I know some religions have the practice of sort of forceful conversion, trying to push somebody to convert to their beliefs. That's not a Buddhist thing. We don't believe in that. So if the person already has beliefs and practices, then talk to them in accordance with that. You could even do those practices with them if it's hard for them to do on their own, for their benefit, not because you believe in them, but to help the person be in a good state of mind. And if the person is not a religious person at all, if they're like a free thinker or an atheist, then you can talk to them using secular language like psychology, to try to encourage them to have a positive state of mind, like just help them to be peaceful and calm, accepting, using whatever language would help the person to do that. So the bottom line is, don't impose your beliefs, your practices on the person unless they're interested. I mean, if they show an interest, they say, you do meditation, don't you? Could you tell me something about meditation? Or do you know any prayer that might help me at this time? So if they ask, if they show interest, then of course you can share that with them. But yeah, don't try to push them, impose things on them. Finally, number 6 is after the person has passed away, even after they stop breathing, you can continue to do things on their behalf, meditate, pray, recite mantras, and so on. And those can benefit the other person. So in Tibetan Buddhism, and I think also in Chinese Buddhism, it's normal to continue praying for someone for 49 days, 7 weeks after they've passed away. This is because the person's consciousness might still be in the bardo, in the intermediate state before the next rebirth. And prayers that you do, also merit you accumulate, making offerings and so forth, you can dedicate to that person, and that might help, no guarantee, but it might help them in their journey to the next life, help them have a fortunate rebirth in their next life. So this is just very brief. There's a lot more information on helping. In fact, there's a book, I think it's called something like How to Help Your Loved One Die Happily and Go to the Next Life. I don't know, something. Venerable Robina, an FPMT nun, compiled all these teachings from Lama Zopa Rinpoche on helping people before they die, during the process of dying, and afterwards. So it's really thick and contains a lot of very helpful information. I know it's available online as an ebook you can download. but it's also a book that you can purchase. So, yeah, like I say, our time has been a little short, limited, so I wasn't able to cover everything that I wanted to or normally do, but hopefully this gives you some idea. And before we end, I would just like to say a few things, a few words about plastic. I think this is kind of relevant to our topic of death and dying, and also preparing for it by being more ethical and responsible. Because I've noticed that there's just a lot of use of plastics here. People have been bringing me things, fruits and so on, always in a plastic bag, sometimes 2, 3 plastic bags. And yeah, so I don't know if you've heard of this Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Has anyone heard of that? The Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So this is a photo of it, and and it's in the Pacific Ocean between Japan and America. But it's not the only one. There are something like 5 or 6 of these garbage patches in various oceans, but this is the biggest one, and it's 1.6 million square kilometers, which is about twice the size of Texas. Texas is the biggest state in America, or 3 times the size of France. So it's huge. And it's mainly composed of plastic debris. A lot of it, I think, is fishing nets and other things that probably were thrown off of ships or fell off of ships. But it also contains, plastic bags and bottles and so on, and microplastics. And they say it's not like a solid mass of trash, but rather an area with a high concentration of debris, and it's constantly changing its size and shape due to ocean currents. And it's hazardous. It's estimated that, so animals sometimes get entangled in it, and then they can't get free, and they die. They starve to death. And others eat. They think the plastic is food. They eat it, but they can't digest it, so they die. So it's estimated that more than 1 million seabirds and 100,000 marine mammals die every year because of plastic pollution, including this Great Pacific Garbage Patch. But there's probably more deaths than that they don't even know about. And this can affect human beings too, because microplastics, tiny, tiny pieces of plastic, can get into the food chain. Like if you eat fish or other kinds of marine animals, then it can get into our bodies. And I heard they even find it in mother's milk going into babies, right? And they don't yet know what effect microplastics have on our bodies. They're still researching that, but probably not so good for us. So it's pretty bad. But fortunately, some people are doing something about it. So there's this one project called the Ocean Cleanup, and it's wonderful. This young man in Holland, he was just 16 years old in high school when he felt inspired to do something about cleaning up the oceans. So he started, and then he got other people involved, and they raised money, and they came up with this project they call Ocean Cleanup. And they have ships that go out with huge nets that collect huge amounts of this plastic garbage, and then they take it to land and recycle it. They're cleaning up this Great Pacific Garbage Patch and others. They're also working on rivers, because a lot of the plastic comes into the ocean from rivers. And so they've been quite successful. By December last year, they had managed to capture 20 million kilos of ocean trash all over the world, both from seas and rivers. And they removed 10 million kilos just from that Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And their aim is to clean up 90% of this ocean garbage, plastic garbage, by 2040, which is just 15 years from now. So, and that's one organization. There's others as well. So there are people doing something about it, which is fantastic. But we can do something too. So you've probably heard this before, but it doesn't hurt to hear it again. So reduce, just try not to buy more stuff than you need, including plastics, things that are in plastic containers. If you have a choice, just buy, loose fruits rather than fruits that are in a plastic container. And if you do buy something packaged, try to choose something that can be recycled, right? And also bring your own shopping bag, right? You can get a shopping bag that you can reuse instead of getting new shopping plastic bags all the time. And reuse plastic boxes from the hawker center. I've been trying to do that here, washing them out and bringing them back and getting them refilled instead of every time a new plastic box. And then recycle. I'm really glad Singapore has a recycling program, these bins where you can put your things, so please participate in that. Recycle as much as you can. And then reuse, instead of buying new things just because it's a year old, throw it away, buy a new one. Try to keep using things. We do this at the Abbey. It's a big part of our life at Sravasti Abbey is to recycle, reuse, keep using things until, they're really not good anymore. But just because there's tons of things to buy in the shops doesn't mean you have to buy all those things. So really check carefully what you really need. And and secondhand things. Don't be ashamed to, reuse something that's already been used by somebody else, just to save the waste. Just a huge amount of waste and human activity. So I just wanted to say that and encourage you to please take care of our planet. And it's also for our benefit and for the benefit of other sentient beings. Preserving life and health and so on. Okay, so I'll stop. And we have a little bit of time if anyone would like to ask a question. Preferably about this topic. Not other things that aren't related to what we've been looking at this weekend.
Hello, thank you so much for the talk. I'm thinking about in terms of preparing like your loved ones for dying. What if you have a relative that is currently a Buddhist, but their own relatives are trying to convert them into another faith, and they are near the tail end of their life lah. So I do not know what I can do as someone to perhaps plant Dharma seeds without confusing her too much, because I think right now she's in that phase of like not sure to do, so I don't want to like disturb her too much. Like if she were to convert, okay, but like how can I plant the seeds of Dharma so that maybe in the future life she can come back to the Triple Gems?
Yeah, this is a tricky situation. I remember when I lived here in Singapore before, hearing about somebody's mother who was passing away, and the eldest son was, I think she was a Buddhist. The eldest son was a Christian, and was trying to convert her. And because I think the eldest son is the one who takes care of the funeral, and isn't it? Do I have that right? Yeah. So the mother was like, oh, I have to please my son because he's going to be managing my funeral and so on. So it's very, very difficult, very challenging situation. Again, the Buddhist view is, we don't want to push people. It's just not the Buddhist way to sort of push people, threaten people, get them scared to do things out of fear. So I think, I don't know what I would do in that situation if it was my mother or my father. I think I would try to talk to them very gently and not in a pushy way, and just try to encourage them to retain the beliefs and the practices that they've had during their life, and talk to them about whatever, Amitabha's Pure Land, good rebirths, whatever they believe in, whatever would be helpful for them. But again, as I said before, we can't force somebody to think a certain way, right? All we can do is encourage them, be there for them, offer our help and our support, but not tightly hold on to expectations that we're going to make them think a certain way. So they might be more persuaded by other family members to convert to Christianity. And don't think that that's a bad thing, because, I mean, my mother was a Catholic, and her whole life, very, very devoted to Catholicism. And I could see at the end of her life that that gave her a great deal of peace. She died really, really peacefully, really, beautiful state of mind, because she had this total faith in God, that God was going to take care of her. Everything would be okay. And so definitely I wouldn't want to interrupt that or disturb that in any way. And I think, from the Buddhist point of view, because we have belief in different realms of existence, including the Deva realms, the God realms, okay? So I think it's quite likely that Christians, their belief in heaven, it's probably one of those God realms. And so if they have those beliefs, and then they're living virtuous lives, they're, doing virtuous things, avoiding non-virtuous things, and then having this faith in God and Jesus and so on, that living in that way is quite likely that they will be born in a good situation, in a good place. And so, from the Buddhist point of view, it's not ideal, but it's not bad. Okay, so the worst thing is if somebody creates bad karma and they go the other way, go to a bad rebirth, hell and hungry ghost and animal and so on. But I think, if someone has sincere belief and are living according to the beliefs of that religion, then they're creating virtue. They're creating the cause for good rebirth. So don't feel like if your attempts to keep her in her Buddhist beliefs and practices, if that doesn't work out, that it's the end of the world. No? Still quite possible she'll have a fortunate rebirth. So, yeah, that's as much as I could say about that. Cindy?
Thank you, Venerable. I'm just wondering, when the person pass on, will they actually have still the consciousness around and knowing what is going on, what we are doing, the living ones? And that's the question. If it is, and we are very sad, and we are very attached to her, then it will make her feel very attached, to us as well. So that's my question. Will they be able to feel it even though they died, and then, about our feelings?
Well, in the Tibetan tradition, the explanation is that as soon as a person dies, the consciousness leaves this body, they immediately take a bardo body. It's a body of the intermediate state, which is kind of a subtle body. And the body they have is actually of the next life. It's like they're already on their way to the next life. And so they no longer identify with their old body and perceive their old body, and they're already moving on to the next life. And people often ask, but what about cases of seeing ghosts? So many people have that kind of experience. After somebody dies, then they see the ghost of that person walking around, or sometimes coming in their dreams, or talking to them, things like that. Many, many stories all over the world. And so when the lamas are asked about this, what they say is that if there is such an appearance of what looks like your father or your mother or whatever, it's not really them. It's a spirit, because there are spirits, unseen beings, who have the ability to impersonate people who have died. And so they can appear in the form of your deceased loved one and, hang around. And but it's not really your loved one who's in that form, because your loved one is already in another form going to their next life. So that's how it's explained. I'm in no position to say if that's true or not. I don't know, but this is how it's explained in the Tibetan tradition, which is based on the scriptures. Okay, it's based on Buddhist sutras, so it's not just something they made up. So given that explanation, it doesn't seem to be the case that a deceased relative is hanging around the family, paying attention. Oh, what are they doing? What are they saying about me? And thus affected by what you're doing and what you're saying. So this is what I've heard from my teachers, and I really don't know.
So if that's the case, just now we also mentioned that after the person passed on, or the loved one passed on, you continue to do the prayers, which may be beneficial. So how does that link?
Okay, so it said that, as soon as the mind or the consciousness separates from this body, it takes this other body called a bardo body, which is like a subtle body, and it's in the form of their next life. And then it goes around looking for this next place of rebirth. So if the person has, enough good karma to have a human life, then the bardo body will be in the form of a human being, but not fully developed. They say around the age of 7, like a 7-year-old child. But it still has to search for a place to be born, parents, suitable parents and so on. And so this period of time could last up to 49 days. That's the maximum amount of time that it takes for this bardo being to find their next life. So during that time, the karma can be changed. So, for example, if it's maybe some bad karma and it's going to be reborn as a dog, then prayers made by, they say especially family members, people who have a relationship with that person, if they make prayers, they make offerings and dedicate to that person, then it could change their karma, and instead of being born as a dog, they could be born as a human being. So within the bardo, the intermediate state, the karma can still be changed. It's still flexible. Once they take rebirth in their new form, it's harder for that to happen. So that's why they say prayers and dedications of merit during the 49 days are really good to do, important to do, and can benefit, but not definite. It just
Thank you,
give them
Venerable.
a chance to
Thank you.
have a better rebirth. Yeah.
Sorry, hi Venerable. I just wanted to check if, say your loved one doesn't have an advanced medical directive, and if you decide to pull off the life support, that wouldn't be considered killing?
You say your relative has an advance?
Doesn't have the advance medical directive,
Oh.
and you decide to pull off the life support, that wouldn't be considered killing, right?
Well, it depends on various circumstances. That question did come up once when I was here. Somebody's mother was dying of cancer, and it was terminal. I mean, it was just no way that she was going to survive, and she was being kept alive on life support. And the doctors were recommending that, you know, the life support be stopped. And the member who it was their mother, was frightened that saying yes to this would be matricide, killing my mother, which is one of the 5 heinous crimes. So I think she checked with somebody. She sent, we sent the message to Kopan Monastery, and I don't remember which lama, which geshe, one of the geshes there, said, no, don't worry, it's not matricide, you're not killing your mother. So I don't remember any other details of that, like what other things were said, but yeah. Because, you know, if a person is on their way out, you know, they're dying, it's definite that they're dying, they're not going to be able to recover and live. And they're being kept alive in an artificial way. I mean, if they didn't have those machines giving them oxygen and so on, they would die. So it's just the machines that are keeping them alive. Otherwise, they wouldn't be alive. And so it's not really killing. It's not terminating their life. It's just allowing the death to happen in a more natural way. That's how I think of it. That's how I see it. Because, you know, in the past, when those machines didn't exist, you know, then there wouldn't even be a choice. The person would just naturally pass when it was time for them. And I think most people probably don't really want that. You know, they don't want their body to be just kept alive, and they're not able, there's no qualities to such a life, right? You can't do anything, you can't talk to people, you're not aware of what's going on. And I mean, if there's a chance of survival, it's different. If there's a chance that you might recover and live a normal life again, that's different. But if it's a terminal illness and there's just no way that you recover from that and your life will be restored to some kind of normalcy, then I don't know. There's different opinions, it's very complex, but to me it just doesn't make sense to keep the body alive. So yeah, anyway, that experience I had before was that it isn't killing, it isn't murder to stop. But still good to, yeah, do all the prayers and practices, really pray hard and dedicate for that person to have fortunate life, fortunate rebirth. Okay, so we've come to the end of our time. There's probably other questions, but yeah, this is a topic that always generates many questions and so on. So I do hope, if you do have questions, they'll find answers elsewhere. But a lot of these questions, there isn't a fixed answer. You know, different people might have different ideas, different experiences, and so on. And we don't always have the Buddha's answer, because some of these issues didn't even exist at the time of Buddha. We didn't have machines to keep people alive artificially at that time. So, so you can ask spiritual teachers, knowledgeable spiritual teachers, for their advice. Ask for second opinions and third opinions if you're not satisfied with one. And but the most important thing is try to always act with a good heart. Yeah, try to have good thoughts, good feelings, good intentions, and just think, I'm not sure if this is the right thing to do, but I really do want to benefit the person, and it seems like this might be the best thing to do. So as long as we have a good intention, a good motivation, not a harmful one, we don't want to do any harm and cause suffering. We're trying to just do good. But because we're not enlightened beings, we don't have the ability to see every aspect and know exactly what is the best thing to do. So we just try our best, use as much wisdom and compassion as we have, and do the best we can. Okay, so let's dedicate the merit, the positive energy we've accumulated from this session and this weekend. Share it with all living beings for their happiness and their enlightenment. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Okay, thank you.